The first taste of rare bourbon you finally got your hands on. That's nice. At Caskers.com, we make this experience easy. Caskers is a one-stop spirit curator with an impressive selection of exclusive, sought-after, rare, and household names in the realm of premium spirits and champagne. Discover the top flavors of the year now by going to Caskers.com and using code WELCOME10 for $10 off your first purchase. Get $10 off your first purchase with code WELCOME10 at Caskers.com.
Attention Talking Simpsons listeners, would you love to hear us give the same treatment to Futurama?
Who would do a thing like that?
Who could do a thing like that?
Then you'll be delighted to know we're doing just that for Futurama's entire first season.
Hey, when you look this good, you don't have to know anything.
And it'll only be available for people who donate at the $5 level to the Talking Simpsons Patreon.
Oh God, no!
And along with 13 episodes of Talking Futurama, you'll get all 23 episodes of Talking Critic, the entire first season of Talking Simpsons, monthly community podcasts, interviews with Simpsons writers, and so much more!
Shut up and take my money!
Remember, go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons to get your hands on podcasts from the world of tomorrow!
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where even Ein looks good enough to eat. I'm your host, Cow Woof Woof Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and we have to share and share alike, Bob.
Who is our special guest?
Not leaving things in the fridge, Nathan Ortega.
Excellent. And today's episode is the Cowboy Bebop episode, Mushroom Samba.
And a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we go!
Today's episode aired in Japan on February 20th, 1999, and yes, we are talking about a dub. A good dub.
Yes,
the best one might say.
Yeah, it's hard to even think of a better dub. I think that's just because I didn't watch many dubs outside of this.
I watched a good number of them, and in the late 90s, Cowboy Bebop's was the best. So this is our second ever anime episode.
And it's Cowboy Bebop's 20th anniversary.
Mm-hmm. And so what better reason to do it? And we wanted to do one of the weirder one-off ones. This episode especially is maybe the funniest episode of the show. Like, definitely great action comedy. And I think Cowboy Bebop means a lot to people. I think we're all basically the same age in this room here, and that it was the right anime at the right time, I think, in the late 90s.
So a lot of this discussion we have on the show is the battle of who saw it first, because that's how we determine supremacy. But I will tell you, where I found out about it is my other podcast partner, Henry, Jeremy, from Retronauts. He was blogging about the DVD releases of Cowboy Bebop. There were previous VHS releases, but I guess they just blended in. But it was in the year 2000 that I started buying the DVDs because of his blog. I'm like, this show is fucking amazing. Where did you guys find Cowboy Bebop?
VHS tapes.
VHS tapes. Wow.
Boom, I beat you too. Yeah, I had VHS tapes
Holy
too.
shit.
Yeah.
Okay, but we can all look down on the people who saw it on Adult Swim.
Certainly.
Plebeians.
Late to the party, guys. Am I right?
But no, this isn't a race. I mean, I wouldn't have heard about it except that every early anime blog I was reading in 1999 was telling me this is the greatest show. You have to, they were hyping it so hard. And I think I got it either with the first VHS or the second. I got it in subbed actually at first because the clamshell has it.
Okay.
And though it was another of those series that I started getting in VHS, but for the last volume, I got in DVD because I had a DVD player by the time that came out. But
nice.
Nathan, what about you?
Yes, I mean, I ended up getting all the VHS tapes because, by nature of me bootlegging them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
Because my history with anime, I was basically, as expensive as it was, I was always trying to get copies of stuff any way I could, and I couldn't always afford to buy every one of them. And I had just not too long ago finished completing my collection of VHS tapes for Evangelion, which is my favorite thing ever in my entire life. But yeah, I was definitely hungry for anime that would appeal to me as a Westerner and a film nerd, and this show, within that first 5 episodes especially, just blew my mind. And it set the tone for me for what I expect out of TV shows in general. It's honestly, I know there's a few weak episodes, quote unquote, by some people, but I think it's as pitch perfect of a series to me as any show could be in terms of just telling all sorts of different stories in any genre it wants to.
Yeah.
It's so versatile.
That's why it's sort of a double-edged sword when you have a non-anime fan. You're like, oh, just watch Cowboy Bebop, but then everything else you watch won't be as
Sets
good.
a bar pretty high for sure.
It's a dragon they'll be chasing for forever, and they'll never really catch it. But yeah, something I loved about Bebop from the beginning was the just flexibility of its stories, that you have. It's a real kind of neo-noir boiled down to such simple characters that can then be in any kind of adventure. It opened it up to such creativity.
And it's weird to go back to this after, so I'd not watched any Lupin the Third before Cowboy Bebop, but now I've seen a ton of it. It's just like, oh boy, I'm having more fun. I mean, I had fun before, but now I can see a lot of the inspirations.
Yeah, once I had that same situation too, where I don't think I'd seen any Lupin until after I saw Cowboy Bebop. And then once I finally watched it, I was like, holy shit, this is when I watched Castle Cagliostro, that's when it really hit me, like, wow, this is these are the same archetypes together but played around differently.
It's funny because the new Lupin series, part 4 and 5, I think they're even borrowing back from Cowboy Bebop a lot of like the stylistic elements, especially the opening for part 4 looks a lot like Cowboy Bebop's opening.
It's only fair to take it back.
It
was theirs. All right, so the history of this show. Let's go back to 1997. Anime production house Sunrise is trying to look for a new series to sell to Bandai. And Shinichiro Watanabe is fresh off of Macross Plus and Gundam 0083, and he's looking to produce a new show, which he would be the sole director of. He had been co-director on previous shows. Now he was going to pitch his own show that he would be director of. And he was looking for a fun, serialized crime, action, sci-fi hybrid, just his own thing that even he recognized was like, this is inspired by Lupin. Like he was not secretive about that at all. And that would be as free as like American jazz. Like it is just has so much influence on it. It's just kind of beautiful, starring a multinational dysfunctional family of bounty hunters at the center of it. It was such a beautiful idea, and it wasn't just him. At the top level, the team included, beyond Watanabe, screenwriter Keiko Nabumoto, character designer and animation director Toshiro Kawamoto, mech designer Kimitoshi Yamane, and composer Yoko Kanno. And that is a murderer's row of talent there.
Oh, yeah.
Who, a lot of them had just worked with him on Macross Plus, which, if you're a Cowboy Bebop fan and you haven't seen Macross Plus, you can see a lot of the ideas they had early in there. Like, it's one of my favorite Macross things ever is Macross Plus. And if you listen to the dub, you can hear Bryan Cranston in his early days as a voice actor.
You're right. Yes, making $50 an hour voicing animes.
And that is like, all those people would go on to do huge stuff. Like, they had like the mech designer Yamane. He had been a major mech designer. Like, he'd worked on Bubblegum Crisis. He'd worked on Gundam, on Macross, and he had gone independent at this time. He didn't work for a giant place anymore. And so they wanted him to design the ships, because originally they thought, well, we're going to sell these ships as toys. But then one part of Bandai was like, we don't think these could be toys. And so then they turned that down. So it wasn't as toyetic a show as it could have been.
I had read that it was actually initially accepted by Bandai's toy division, and then they're like, well, wait, no, we told you to make a thing for spaceships that we can make toys for. What the hell is this?
Yeah.
And then Bandai Visual was like, okay, fine, we'll do this without that angle. But it's so funny that it was born out of a toyeticness.
Yeah. And this is also, for where Sunrise was in production, this was one of their next major shows right after Escaflowne. And Escaflowne is kind of an experimental mech show, not to the extent that, say, Evangelion was, but it was a really good mech show.
Yeah, I have the Blu-rays. It's interesting in that it's a shonen show for boys with fighting and robots and swords, but it's also shoujo show for girls. Yeah. It's about falling in love and going to another dimension with sexy boys in it and things like that. So, and it's also very, very high budget as well.
And so this show, and Cowboy Bebop was certainly high budget, and it would be aired at first on TV Tokyo and then canceled 6 episodes in.
Wow. The airing order is weird too. I looked it up because it was like episode 2, Stray Dog Strut. That's the one where they chase around Ein. Number 3 is Honky Tonk Women. That's a casino episode. then Heavy Metal Queen, which is that one with the space trucker lady, and then 2 Fae episodes. So they seem real Fae focused. And then
Try to get those ratings up. Yeah.
You don't see like Japanese TV networks do this before. It's something that American TV networks would do with sort of failed dramas. They'll air a handful of episodes in weird orders and then pull it.
I guess because this is so episodic, for most of the episodes, you can run them out of order to a point. At a certain point, Ed has to be there and Faye has to be there, but...
That's what I like about Bebop. Another thing is that it's subtle continuity and going from story to story. But then the show got aired on Wow, the satellite network. It did a little better there, but it was more of a word of mouth hit. It was not an immediate hit. And physical media in Japan really helped it spread as well.
I could be wrong about this, but I think this is one of those shows where if you look when it aired, it was like 2 a.m. on Tuesdays. And just who was watching this show at this time?
Death slot that they were like, just put it on TV.
Yeah.
Who cares? We don't know what to do with it.
And it was a satellite station, correct?
Wow was, yeah.
You would have to pay for that, so maybe that's why they could air the rest there, keep producing it.
There were some issues of graphic violence, I think, especially episodes like Sympathy for the Devil that involves violence on a young boy.
You shoot a kid in the head at the end of it. Spoilers. It's a dark, it's a dark show, but that's something too I loved about its fluidity, that you could have a silly episode where no one dies, and then the next one could be one where multiple dudes get their heads just blown off, they're just dead.
Oscillating between light comedic moments and really heartfelt, heartrending drama and violence. It's just kind of versatile in that respect.
Yeah, no, the versatility is even in the character. Spike is a very versatile dude. He has Bruce Lee style speeches about the suppleness of a reed and being able to bend and all that. It really comes through. That's why the characters are so memorable too, because they come through in the show, it is expressed in the show as well. And I do have to give special recognition to Yoko Kanno, which a show as musical as this needs a soundtrack, and she might be one of the best composers, at least in anime ever.
And her band, Seatbelts, or The Seatbelts, I don't know if there's a the in there, but I remember watching the show was giving me goosebumps. I just remember driving around listening to all the Cowboy Bebop music with my Sanmei CDs, the cheaper ones, and just it being a very exciting time in a young man's life discovering Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, I used to listen to them all the time going to my work at AMC Theaters, and when I got to be a assistant manager at the concession stand when it was staying late to clean stuff up, I would then put on my Cowboy Bebop CDs and listen to them as I was cleaning up popcorn residue. So the soundtrack was amazing. There was also something too that Watanabe wanted the series to be finite. That was his choice on it. His explanation for it goes, quote, "I knew it would be a hit, and it would be a really big hit. I thought people would ask for more, and it would end up being something like Star Trek. I thought it would be a problem if I kept creating a new Cowboy Bebop series for the next 30 years until I'm an old man. So I thought if I finished it, I wouldn't have to draw anymore."
That is great. I think that does contribute to how people still love it so much, because there's only 26 episodes in a movie. He's not going to make more. There are spiritual sequels like Samurai Champloo and Michiko and Hachin and Space Dandy, things like that all have similar qualities, but there is only one Cowboy Bebop.
And they could come back to it many times. I would bet, if Adult Swim was giving offers to Big O and Fooly Cooley to pay for new episodes.
I'm sure they tried and he wasn't interested.
Yeah. But I think another reason for why it's been hard to bring it back is because once the show ended, key folks who worked on the series left to form their own studio and left Sunrise Studios, which Sunrise is mostly, they started out as the Gundam studio and they kind of grew from there. And so since they left Sunrise anyway, then the real question becomes well, then who do you pay to make this Cowboy Bebop?
I'd be afraid it'd be like the newer episodes of Dexter's Lab, where it's it feels different and it's just not, the magic isn't there anymore.
Yeah, well,
it's a different show.
I feel so much so this is such a specific point in time. Even the people who worked on this went on to make really good things, but it never felt as special as Cowboy Bebop.
The stars didn't align for those other projects. Yeah.
It's lightning in a bottle.
I'm no Wolf's Rain fan.
No, but yeah. So the success overseas, I would dare say that I think Cowboy Bebop an even bigger hit outside of Japan than it was in Japan. I think it has a real, thanks to the multiculturalism in the world they built. I think it translates well to so many different regions, including America.
Yeah, and these were the years from like the early 2000s were when I was going to anime cons, like at least 2 a year until like 2007. So there was no one who didn't like Cowboy Bebop, and you would see Cowboy Bebop cosplay and the books and action figures and screening rooms and things like that. It was just everyone
had mass market appeal outside of people who are really into Japanese media. And I think a lot of it for me personally is because I watch this show. This and Ava I at least watch once a year, just to have new perspective on it. It's my two favorite shows, and I feel like I want to see if they hold up to my memories of them. And Bebop especially is something that has aged so well. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that unlike a lot of other anime, Bebop is very understated, and it communicates a lot to you through visuals and through quiet moments and not having the characters say how they feel all the time. And I think a lot of Japanese media tends to be broadcasting people's feelings and telling you exactly what they're thinking and wanting to do. Whereas like they use facial expressions and subtle moments to convey things that are a little bit more like Western cinema, where you can hang and let a moment communicate something that's a little bit more complex than
I'm thinking of the end of the first episode where something sad happens, and then it's Spike practicing his kung fu or whatever, and Jet cooking, like they're both doing solitary things to like get through like
and there's like
trauma,
complex emotions being conveyed through their kind of contemplative tasks without saying, man, that whole adventure with that drug guy really bummed me out. Like,
that was it. Yeah.
It's something too. That's what actual maturity is. Like, people talk about M-rated games, they're mature. When you say this is mature content, it usually means like blood and boobs, but which, not to say there aren't blood and boobs in Cowboy Bebop, but
there's depth to the storytelling of characters.
It is that they trust an audience to understand stuff. They don't have to explain it all. And one of my favorite moments in the show comes out of that, which is in the 26th episode. Spike is telling, I'm not going to spoil stuff for folks who maybe actually somehow haven't seen it, but Spike is telling Faye a secret about himself, and she gets really mad. She's like, you never talk about this stuff. Like, she's almost the audience saying like, why are you being so earnest? Why are you being so direct? This is not what this is supposed to be.
Right.
I love that moment. Probably a big reason many people in America have heard of it is thanks to Adult Swim. When Adult Swim debuted September 2nd, 2001, they had mainly comedy, home movies, C-Lab, Space Ghost, but they had 1 hour of anime at midnight. That's how they're like, we're so scared of how dirty this is. In 2001, Toonami was huge, but they were already having to edit the crap out of the stuff they were showing on Toonami, and there were tons of shows that they think would get good ratings, but they just couldn't air it at 5 p.m. on Cartoon Network.
Didn't they have a midnight run thing? They were testing this whole thing out, and it sort of inspired Adult Swim as a thing. They were like airing stuff. Yeah. They were airing like Gundam Wing specials and things like that.
Endless Waltz was a late night showing.
Yeah, it was an unedited because they couldn't edit it down, I think, enough to air on their normal block. So they were like, they did Daft Punk, the Interstellar movie, and some other. They were experimenting with airing adult animation at night, and I guess that's how they convinced Warner to like let them do this block of shows that are targeted to adults.
It was still in the era in which they were very gun shy. The early years of Adult Swim, where like in Futurama in 2003, they added out the mention of Jesus, and they would have like, especially in the early weeks of Adult Swim, like just like red text running across the screen, like "Children, leave the room. We are being sincere.
Please don't yell at us, parents."
Well, and one thing that really hurt Cowboy Bebop in its original Adult Swim airing was September 11, because the fourth episode aired the week before, 2 days before September 11th. And actually the episode where he faces his cowboy rival, which involves the Teddy Bomber blowing up buildings, that did not air in the first run.
Oh, no.
Because
that's fair, though.
I wouldn't have aired.
I just remember how puritanical they were back then. So if you think about, like what happens on, say, Rick and Morty now, in the early days of Adult Swim, it's like there is a 3-second shot of two men in bed together, not having sex or kissing, just in bed together. No, get it out of here. We cannot have that on TV at 11 o'clock.
One guy. They deleted the other guy.
They deleted a guy. Wow.
Yep. Over time, moms realize that they have so many more things to be mad about than cartoons on TV. So like now they can just get away with anything.
Another of my favorite edits was in the chess episode where they go on the space station where there's the stoners and there's just pot leaves everywhere. They had to cut all of that out from the background.
You can't even see a pot Leaf on Cartoon Network.
But Cowboy Bebop was such a huge hit on Adult Swim. Very soon, it got its own Adult Swim night of anime, Saturday night, to go with the Sunday comedy night. That's just how big. It opened a huge door for mature anime on American broadcasting cable, which is a huge moment for anime as a medium, I would say.
As much as I like to be snotty about, like, you saw it first on Adult Swim, I feel like, you're right, Henry. That was very important for the emergence of anime as a mainstream thing, no longer this thing we have to hide and pretend we don't know about. But, like, let's just watch anime on TV. It's fine. It's no longer this secret hobby.
And it definitely helps shows that don't have quite the exposure over here get exposure with their weirder series that they acquired. And, it's helping normalize and mainstream a lot of shows that maybe don't have that kind of presence over here.
And so post-show, they do come together for a final movie called Knockin' on Heaven's Door, which comes out in 2001 in Japan. Was a box office flop in Japan. Did okay here, but those kind of returns on it definitely let you know that's the end of Cowboy Bebop from a financial standpoint. It was produced actually by this animation studio Bones, which was all the people who had left Sunrise post Cowboy Bebop to start their own studio.
They're great. I think most recently they've done My Hero Academia.
Yeah,
it's like you can tell the quality level.
Bones is
they're
greatest.
talented.
Yeah, they also worked on Full Metal Alchemist. That's another of the most popular
I will say
series.
not everything they do is great. Well,
let's talk about Wolf's Rain.
Okay. I was going to say, they've done a lot of great. It's sort of like Ridley Scott, where it's like you've made the greatest movies ever, but also the other things.
Well, Bones as a studio's got to pay those bills.
Yeah, like something like the Scrapped Princess, which I watched all of, is
Me too.
fairly bland and has a
Sure.
weird Matrix ending, which I still don't get. But Wolf's Rain at least looks very nice.
Yeah. Well, so the interesting split was that directly post-show, after the movie, Shinichiro Watanabe leaves to work with the studio Madhouse to produce the show Samurai Champloo with almost none of the top-level folks from Cowboy Bebop, while meanwhile, Nobumoto, the screenwriter, Kawamoto, the animation director, and Yoko Kanno, the composer, all went to work on Wolf's Rain, which is why when you watch Wolf's Rain, it looks a lot more like Cowboy Bebop than Samurai Champloo does. And that was the interesting split. But I liked Samurai more. Like, it was a more wacky series. Like Wolf's Rain it's more like a grown-up Square Enix game to me. That's
it really
what it
is.
like. Yeah.
It's like a Beatles moment where they all went in different directions and made the most of them thing they could, and people's opinions on it will vary based on what part of the original thing they really liked.
I did like Champloo at the time. I didn't watch all of it, but it does have a very similar dynamic between the characters. They're like Spike, Jet, and the Faye kind of stand-ins. They're also of similar archetypes.
Yeah, and they're all just kind of hitting it's archetypes engaging in tropes, but also with a weird style to it, and instead of being a sci-fi Lupin thing, it's a samurai takeoff. Though a lot of the people would get back together to work on Space Dandy. That was the first show with Bones that Watanabe had produced again. Watanabe also, for Americans, would know that he did the two best animatrix shorts as well. The Kid Story and Detective Story, which had the least to do with the Matrix.
And you did that Blade Runner short for the newest
just
Blade
did
Runner
that.
too.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
He's just a Westaboo. He's super into Western culture.
That's
He's
awesome.
like, anything I can do for it. Yeah.
Well, I love the Animatrix was such a cool moment of that the Wachowskis were so big that as anime fans, they could just say, why don't we just ask these anime people if they'll make this thing for us, and they'll just do it.
And it kind of ended up being better than the other movies, too, I think.
Yeah.
Especially certain sequences, like the history one. That was more interesting than the actual movie.
Yeah, I think that's what came together in that the Animatrix was really what they wanted to do with the Matrix. They didn't want to end the Matrix again. They wanted to tell stories within the world of the Matrix forever.
Right.
And that's what they did with those. And also there were tons of great Matrix comics that were based on it too. But if you've never seen, listeners, the Detective Story and the Kids one, at the very least, those two shorts are great. There's other great shorts in there too, including probably the best thing Square Films ever did, which is not really saying much. But I guess the last thing I want to say about the creation of the show is that it is probably the best dub of all time, I think. Especially Steve Bloom, he is the perfect Spike Spiegel. He is just so good. And Melissa Fawn, who is Ed and really gets a lot to do in this episode, is so fun fun too.
This got everybody so much work, even outside of the anime industry.
Yeah, these non-union actors finally got to get union gigs. Like Steve Blum is now the voice in everything, everywhere. Like you'll hear him in anything.
Especially like Wolverine. He gets to play Wolverine in all the games
He's a great
and
Wolverine.
cartoons. Yeah.
And that's why, unlike in our Kill la Kill episode, this is going to be the dub we're going to be getting clips from, because the dub was just so freaking good. It kind of ruins it for all other dubs. I even saw Super Eye Patch Wolf, friend of the show. He did a video on Cowboy Bebop, just saying that even though he is usually a subs over dubs guy, and I am definitely a subs over dubs guy,
too.
like this is the exception that proves the rule. Like this is the acting works in every moment by being non-typical localized anime acting.
I haven't seen the dub in over a decade, and going back into it today for this episode, I'm like, is this going to be good? But it was really good. I was like, wow, these choices they make, you would not hear on, like, let's say an ADV film stuff.
I think that they also had really excellent material that understood the language of Western cinema.
Yeah.
So the source material was easier for them to adapt into English than, say, a lot of other anime that's sort of baked into the culture of Japanese media. Like, I think that it's made it easier for them to localize and understand sort of how characters should speak. And I think the dialogue being understated helped that too. So they're not...
I agree. I think maybe your brain even thinks it sounds more natural, because it's not like people saying, oh, Spike-san, how are you today?
The
senpai?
sentence structure is a little bit different, and it just flows a bit more naturally.
Everyone loves like a crazy chicken. My cat, my mouse want chicken. I left my head already chicken. Dreaming of the chicken. Crazy about the chicken. Happy with the chicken. From the bottom of my heart, the chicken. Lost it well with Cajun sauce. Together. Got me sick, don't throw it that way. Bake it with Asian sauce. Together. It is good for your healthy life. Baby, it's true. This will you love it to the bone. Whoa.
Hey there, Space Cowboys. We hope you're enjoying all of our chat about Cowboy Bebop in this week's episode of What a Cartoon. And if you'd like to hear all the other cool stuff we've done on the show, like our chat about Kill la Kill, or Beavis and Butthead, or Batman the Animated Series, it's all there in the archives of this show. And if you want to hear the next week's episode, which is Space Ghost Coast to Coast, a week ahead of time and ad-free, you can just sign up at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons and get your hands on it right now. For just $5 a month, you can support this and our sister show, Talking Simpsons, and get access to every episode a week early and ad-free, as well as tons of bonus content, including Talking Futurama, where we have gone through the entire first season of Futurama in the same style that we do What a Cartoon and Talking Simpsons. Not to mention tons of other great exclusives that you can only find at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. I should also mention that this week's episode is brought to you by Hulu, which is where I watched Cowboy Bebop again for this podcast. The entire series is on there, along with tons more content, which you can only find at Hulu. And if you'd like to try a 30-day membership for free, you can do it at tiny.cc/TSHulu. And if you do it there, a little bit of money gets kicked back to us, the Talking Simpsons family, and it helps keep the show going, as this is me and Bob's full-time thing. So if you'd like to sign up for that 30-day trial membership of Hulu, just go to tiny.cc/TSHulu right now. Okay, back to the rest of the show.
Cowboys, 4 bounty hunters, 4 hearts, 4 notes. Following a dusty trail of money, sin, and desperation. Living day to day, dreaming hour by hour. 4 beats, 4 parts of a movement. Mars to Venus, Callisto to Ganymede. Bounty to bounty and outlaw to outlaw. 1 ship, 1 crew, 1 destiny. Cowboy Bebop.
Let's kick the beat. It's your turn. The conga drums. Listen to the rhythm tracks.
Okay, so this episode we're doing is Cowboy Bebop Mushroom Samba, the 16th episode in the series, and one of the most fun ones there is, I think.
It's great. A lot of fun trips in this episode.
Yeah, also, Tank is, just start with the opening, Tank is maybe one of the best OPs of all time. Like, just the primary colors and the fast jazz music, like, it lets you know that this is a hip, cool show.
Well, the way it starts, it just fucking wakes you up. Whatever
Yep.
you're doing, it's like da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, you always have to check the volume on your TV,
Yeah.
because that always happens to me when I put in the Blu-ray. I'm like, oh, crap, my ears are bleeding.
And it gives you just a good look at each character and lets you know what their deal is. Just in it's great when the show works in such archetypes. And so when you see like Jet is defined by strength, Pike is defined by speed, Faye by her sexuality, Ed by her weirdness, it all just fits in there. And so then we start this episode with the characters at their lowest, which is usually when we meet the Bebop crew.
This was the most precious of the precious. Emergency rations for a true emergency. Saved for the last of the last resorts. All I'm asking is who ate the food that was in this container?
Food rage. It's a scary thought.
Spike, was it you by any chance?
I wouldn't leave the empty box lying around as evidence.
Ed is hungry.
Maybe you ate it and you're just pretending to be mad because we found the box.
What's that?
We haven't had anything to eat in 2 days! Wouldn't you call that an emergency?
I want some bell peppers and beef.
I don't know who the voice actor for Jet is, but I haven't heard him in many other places. But I like his readings a lot. They're very naturalistic. I feel like they all do a good job, but some of them are very performative, you know, like especially Wendy Lee, because she is basically she's like #1 female anime voice actor, period. She's in everything. She does everything. She even is a director. But I feel like his does feel like more like, I don't know, stagey or less. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying here.
Yeah, that's Bo Billingsley.
Okay.
And he's really great. And also, it's one of those rare times where, like, an African-American character is being voiced by an African-American man. Like,
Yeah.
it's especially the anime voice acting world is a very white one, especially when so many are recorded in Canada. I think that's
Similar to the voice acting for video games, it's a small community of people who get a lot of work regularly because they know the process better than a lot of other actors. So it just becomes, like you said, very incestuous. I wanted to say one thing about this bit I love is that it starts off immediately, even if you've never seen the show before, this sequence of dialogue establishes their personalities immediately.
Yeah.
With having him be the mom and be like, who ate the last of the food? And all of them react in the most to their character way possible.
Who ate these cookies?
Yeah, while the camera has a steady shot
Yeah.
circling all of them. It's such a cool little moment.
It's a very visually inventive way to show that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you listeners were confused why the sound mixing goes up and down on that, that's because the camera panorama is going around.
Oh man, in 5.1 it goes all around your room.
It's just such a cool cinematic touch that you don't see in anime a lot. You don't see camera work and like interesting cinematography in anime because
Yeah.
it's so static shots trying to like as economically convey those moments as possible. So there's
Yeah.
all this cool filmic stuff happening.
It easily could have been a series of static shots, but also one thing I like about the show, but which makes no sense, is like, how do you like get these millions of dollars from bounties, but you can't afford food? Like, how do you have a spaceship and not food? It never made sense to me.
Repair costs, fuel,
but it's like
the expense of trekking around the galaxy might be a lot.
the shortage of food is something that happens a lot on this show.
Spike wastes their money quite a lot too, just through like weird
collateral damage or
I guess they have no credit in the future.
Yeah, or also sometimes they could capture somebody and then decide like, no, the just thing is to not do that, which then makes them no money.
Or just the cosmic universe, the universe plays out in the same way that like One Piece happens, where like they save the day, but they don't get the reward for whatever technicality, and they're like, well, we're just as poor as we started. Great.
I also love, it's a great definition of Spike's character too, that he's just like, if I had stolen this, I would have been caught. Like I wouldn't have been dumb enough to leave it. Well, meanwhile, Faye, who we know is the guilty party, she's immediately trying to deflect like, maybe it was you that did it, huh? And in her usual sneaky Faye style. And also just the upset, it's great poetic justice that she's just her bad luck that she stole it, she almost got away with it, but Faye is a hard luck woman, as she is called in another episode. So she's I just love that they give her diarrhea, which you would never give to a sex symbol of an anime.
Yes.
They wouldn't do that.
They give the sexiest character nightmarish diarrhea in this episode.
Well, also, not to say that the show never did fan service things with her,
yeah.
but they held back considerably compared to so many of their compatriots.
And they certainly made it part of her character to use it as in a way that is understandable based on her background.
Also, this is just a very Tarantino-y episode to me too, because this hit and run driver knocking them off course, like it's just a whole misadventure, and a hit and run from a drug dealer is the start of like so many Tarantino films too, that they're so poor they don't even have gas. They just have to be like, well, I just love when hard sci-fi comes into the show too, and they're just like, well, no, we have no gas. We have to wait for gravity to pull us onto a planet.
They can't eat until they drift to a planet.
Yes, they will die first. And so then they crash on the planet, and that's when Faye gets some poetic justice.
Whoa. Look at this. Where are we? There's nothing here.
That's the least of our troubles.
We're gonna need to check the whole ship. Think you could hunt up a little food, Faye? What's wrong?
It hurts. I got a pain.
This a joke. These rations expired a year ago.
It's a good thing I didn't eat them.
Serves you right. It's poetic justice.
Ein did solve the mystery.
Yeah, Ein, that's always great when get so many scenes of Ein's genius in this show, like that and they never question it. They're like, oh, is that funny? Like they don't seem to know, they obviously don't know he's a brain genius, but not only are they out of fuel, out of food, out of money, but now the Bebop is broken. It just gets smashed. They have it so bad every episode. Like that's why it's great. They always start at zero and they have to end back at zero every time.
And they're in a place, according to a scientist, called Western World.
Yes, yeah. Apparently, I've never seen the movie, but the internet tells me that the scene is a reference to Wim Wenders' Paris, Texas.
I've not seen it either.
The look at the sign that says the Western World, that is a reference to that movie, which, I mean, that's, again, I love that, like, Watanabe and his team pull from everything. Like, they've seen so many works from all over the world. So then they set Ed on her way because I like that they're just like, God, we get this kid out of my hair. I'm sick of this kid.
We don't need them to break the Bebop any more than it already is broken. Please go do something useless, like go find us food.
That single peanut gave her a lot of energy, though. What I like about her character in watching this for the first time in a while is like if Ed has to go from point A to point B, she will not just walk there like a human. There will be all sorts of other things she will do to get there, like dancing or rolling or skipping or hopping. It can't just be a normal walk.
That's why it makes Ed and Ein such a perfect like pair to go hang out and do wacky stuff and sort of in the periphery.
They get to have their own like side Looney Tunes adventure while everyone else is trying to fix stuff.
1,000 wulongs each. That includes the tax. Cash only, no credit cards accepted.
Don't have cash.
Then you don't get no melon.
So can I have one?
1,000 oolongs, and it's cash only, no cards. Hey, kid, no use staring like that. If you want food, then go into town and get it there.
Don't bother with the change. But if you see this man, give me a call. I'll show my appreciation. Cutie pie.
What I like about this, going back to the dub, is with all of the black characters in the episode, it's like, oh, you got black actors.
Mm-hmm.
You did not obviously get a white guy to do the quote-unquote black voice, which is like, they could have done that.
Yeah.
Working on this dub in 1999, like, who's going to fucking see this Cowboy Bebop
Yeah.
thing? Just get Steve in here or whatever.
Yeah, it's not a prejudice thing that there's so few actors in there, but it's also like you have stock actors. Why not just have another guy do 5 more voices on this and just fill it out instead of chasing down an actor you've never met before or you don't normally use?
Yeah, and also in terms of the appearance, I was happy to see that even as late as 1997 or 8, you would see very offensive caricatures of black facial features and things like that. But on this show, they're not insulting caricatures or anything like that. I was like, this is very progressive for a show from 1998.
The characters are definitely pulled from obvious sources
Oh,
of
yes,
the blaxploitation films, but
they don't give her a name. I just called her Pam.
Actually,
she's named Coffee.
Oh,
based on the
Coffee,
Pam
yeah.
Grier movie.
Oh,
yeah.
you're right. They do call her Coffee. You're right.
Yeah, so they make. I love this surface level reference too, just in case. Like,
Who's that chef guy? Where's he from?
Yeah. Well, same with in the second episode with Ein, they fight a guy named Hakeem, which is just like, yeah, we get it. It's. I also just love, like, this is a tour de force for Melissa Pham or Aoi Tada, the voices of Ed in both versions. Like, I think it's a real credit to this dub too that, like, Ed in the Japanese version just speaks in like nonsense, and Dada is like da 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 do do do, which it's one thing to do like a 1-to-1 of straight dialogue, but of comedic nonsense
That makes it work in the same way.
Yeah, make it work in the same way and have it feel natural. They pull it off with Ed beautifully.
A lot of the Ed lines made me laugh on purpose. Like, oh, that was a great delivery. That was a funny line. Like, way to go.
And the hunt set to the song Chicken Bone is so great too. I love the song. I know all these songs more than the episodes.
Me too.
And so hearing Chicken Bone again, and the movie kind of has a sequel scene to this when they go on the hunt for the hacker guy
wearing the jack-o'-lantern mask and a little cape, and they're going trick-or-treating.
Actually, I know the music better than the show too, Henry. And it's like when a song starts playing in the show, I'm like, it's like, did someone start a CD in this room? It's like it doesn't belong in the show for some reason.
It just teleports me back. Yeah, same with. So after the Pam Grier character gives him the money, which is the first time I got the joke that she says, "Don't keep the change," and she gave him an exact $1,000 Wulong bill.
Yeah.
Like, I finally got it, guys.
It's great. Like, there are a bunch of slow-mo scenes of all the things happening. You're not sure if she's going to steal from him or shoot somebody.
I also love just speaking of the camera movements too, I just love that when they're on the ship and the ship is crashed, the camera is at an angle, or they're at an angle because the ship is, or when they're all yelling at each other, you then have like tense close-ups of everyone. Like the like you said, the camera work expresses so much more on the show that you can do creatively if you're going for it. And also too, I love, like, when they go around the city they're on Io, one of the moons of Jupiter, that when you go around the city, I just love how broken and lived in everything is. Like, this is a shitty future where nobody's built new shit in a long
it looks
time.
like New Mexico or something.
Yes,
it's all just very, like, not lived in.
Well, they did blow up the moon.
Yeah. Well, and the police station says Policia on it too, so it's definitely, this is a Spanish-speaking town at the very least. So then this gets like so freaking Tarantino-y, not just in like the reveal of bodies in a trunk, which is like in every Tarantino film.
Well, actually, what I got out of it was Speed Racer when Coffee pulls off and like Ed opens the trunk, is like laughing with Ein next to her. It's like, oh, it's Spritle and Chim Chim. They're hiding in the car.
I never thought of that, but I think that sounds so intentional for Mock Go. Go? Is it 3 goes or whatever?
Enough goes. It's fine.
Yeah, it's enough goes.
Plenty of goes.
And then the Shaft brother dragging the coffin is straight out of the original Django, which is another like grindhouse favorite. This shows that Watanabe and his team, they were watching all of these movies. Like they knew all these cult cinema things, and just getting like a melange of these together. Like no show was doing this, not just anime, but like you didn't see this on American TV shows. It was just so
ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
So much so. Like, I think this show and Evangelion gave, if not inspiration, then gave like permission to dudes like Hideo Kojima to get weird and referential in his games as well. and yeah, the Shaft Brothers guy that's just like, well, yeah, what? They're not trying to hide this. And also getting revenge on a drug dealer is also such a blaxploitation thing, but they had to make it a little more comedic for Ed's goofy adventure.
He had a Roger Rabbit style death.
Ha! Now don't tell me that you've forgotten who I am so soon, Domino.
Let's see.
Think, damn it. I'm the youngest Shaft brother. We bought all those mushrooms from you.
I don't remember you.
No? Do you want to know why I drag an empty coffin like this wherever I go, huh? I'll tell you. Because I'm putting your corpse inside it.
Pieces all gone.
What with who?
My older brother ate a mushroom that he bought from you, and then he laughed until he twisted his intestines to death.
Happy way to die, I say.
Shut up! The whole thing was your fault.
I call that unjust resentment.
Edward is hungry.
Yeah? Then eat this, fool! Hey! Get your butt back here and fight like a man, you fool!
Food. Hey, wait a minute, Ein. We have to share and share alike.
So yeah, I love how the Shaft Brothers' dramatic revenge is immediately foiled, and then people are calling him out. I was like, no, it's bullshit. Like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Unjust resentment.
Your coffin's stupid. Your brother took drugs and laughed really hard. Like, fuck you. You don't get to kill me.
Also, technical error on this episode's part. I have taken the magic mushrooms before. They don't work instantly. It's like, and you don't hiccup when they start working. So this must be some sort of future
Space
mushroom.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They've improved psychedelic mushrooms a lot better. Well, maybe they work faster on dogs too.
Could be. Don't ever do that though.
No, I never dose a dog with drugs, but the animation of the Ein hopping around is one of the best moments in the whole series.
He turns into like a little mechanical, like cheap toy the way he hops down the road.
Which he had to take the bullet on that because Ed can't do drugs. Like, she's a child. That would be a tragedy.
It's actually pretty impressive that in a country that has like horrible drug laws, they would even think this would be cool to air. You know, just I guess it was so outlandish, or maybe even the idea of magic mushrooms were not like in the Japanese cultural brain at the time.
I mean, maybe it made more sense too if you were doing such a pastiche of 70s films you need drugs in those two to make it 70s.
And mushrooms are probably the most like foreign concept drug in comparison to like doing stuff with needles or whatever, or even like the bloody eye stuff in the first episode.
It's all got to be like future drugs,
right?
And speaking of character-driven moments, so when Ed is secretly dosing the entire crew,
experimenting on them,
yes, yeah, that each moment reveals something about the characters.
Very
too.
good, yeah.
That Faye just is like, oh, and eats it. Jed has to talk himself into maybe stealing something, and then meanwhile, Spike takes it with gusto. Like, you don't even
sleight of
he
hand almost. He
trick.
just pretends like he's just standing over there and whoop. Put it in the mouth.
For the sake of no one, I like Jet's like, well, that's not here, so I didn't steal it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing things.
It's
2 mushrooms.
It can't be theft if it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I like in the shots of Ed and Ein watching them
in the
that
tent.
Ein is half lidded, which I think is him recovering from his dosing. And also, so yeah, then the mushrooms kick in. Just the hiccup when the drugs hit is such a great little moment.
And they all have their own little high adventures. I think Jet had the best trip, though.
With the bonsai trees?
Yeah, he's laughing. They teach him the secret of life. Meanwhile, Faye has a bad trip.
Yeah.
Like you were saying earlier, they gave the sexiest character in the show the most unflattering moment, and then her most unflattering she has the most unflattering like trip because it's just like she's looking all sweaty and horrible,
and she's got to like
toilet.
Like she's basically having a trip where she's like in an ocean of toilet water.
Let's remind everybody that also she probably just used that toilet due to her bad food trip.
Ooh, not a good time.
She was going back in there to shit again too.
Ooh, tripping while having diarrhea, not recommended.
No.
That's a Burning Man experience, I think.
Oh god.
Here's Jet's trip.
Hey, the world really is a great place. What? Oh, wow. Did I just say something?
That's a great line.
Yeah. Just him staring at his bonsai trees, too. Like, it trades great on his history of just that his bonsai trees are his one escape in his entire life. Then, meanwhile, Spike's trip is also something, especially for a guy who, escaped death in his past. Like, this definitely is informed by the life Spike has lived.
Hey, mister. This here is the stairway to heaven. You know that, don't you?
Obnoxious little frog.
Fine, why should I care? I warned you, though.
That's my favorite one, I think, and I think I love that they immediately cut to what is actually happening.
Yeah, I was thinking
just
about
seeing him
that.
kind of walking in place, all baked out of his mind.
It's such great, it's such perfect comedy of cutting to the reality of him and Faye, like Faye swimming in the air, but just, Spike stepping in place on the same thing.
It's a lot of like subtle, quiet comedy. It's not like broad and huge like a lot of anime tends to be. It's what I love about even their funny episode is subtle,
Yeah, and so then Ed realizes what these mushrooms are.
So that's how it is. The secret of the universe is so simple. Oh, man. By the way, just who am I anyway?
So these mushrooms really aren't good for eating, right, Ein?
It's a fun subversion where at this point, so Ed is usually the crazy one and everyone else is normal. Now everyone is crazy and she's the one who's like, I know what's going on here.
And it's great too, her like kind of suiting up scene when she realizes like, well, I guess I'm the hero this episode. Everybody else is incapacitated.
Go through my toy chest to find my equipment to go on my adventure.
I think even in the preview, so if you go back to the last episode and listen to the preview, the characters all do them, sometimes out of character. And Ed's like, this episode's all about me. I get to go on an adventure this time. And they're all trying to stop her.
Cowgirl Ed is the new show,
And I love too her scooter is great. Like she finally has a vehicle to match everybody else having their own vehicle, and it's so perfect for her too. This just rocket scooter, this cute thing, but also incredibly dangerous and overpowered, just like her.
Yes, she's indestructible.
Also Coffee's going to be in a lot of trouble running from her interrogation like that. But it's such a great scene, even for the one-off characters in this episode. You could just have her see Ed and then cut to her chasing her, but instead you have her like, oh, how do I get out of here? Do I run out of this interrogation?
It's been a long time, but I thought she was going to hit that guy over the head with a melon, crush him with the melon.
And then cut to the Shaft brother, and just so you know that to fully make him a joke, he is eating shaved ice. Instead of, he could be drowning his sorrows in alcohol, but he's eating shaved ice.
What's wrong, youngin'? Why so blue?
Your woman run off with another man or something? Sounds familiar.
None of your business, you old geezer.
Yes, Sonny, that's what happens when you eat too fast.
I got a whole remedy for that. Mushrooms. You sure that works?
He's so conflicted about whether he should chase after them or finish his $3 shaved ice.
I think that's supposed to be sort of like implying how immature he is, because I think that type of dessert is considered a juvenile thing in Japan. So it's like only little kids would eat that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
For him being a grown man sitting there eating that is just like. And then the old guy's talking down to him the whole time.
Especially he's trying to put himself off as project himself as a tough guy too, who wants revenge.
That does fit with. I've seen many anime where it's said to be like, well, a man doesn't eat this ice cream.
Right.
I remember that in Ranma 1/2. Like, it was,
and the three old men though, I believe those are a reference to some of the characters from Pokemon, as if they had aged realistically to the year that Cowboy Bebop takes place in.
I forgot that.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
It's like I think it's definitely Ash and Brock. The third one is probably Gary.
I would think Gary, yeah.
But they definitely look a lot like, if you age them up into the Cowboy Bebop world, they would be that old.
In one interview I saw, Watanabe said those three are his favorite characters, but I think that was like a joke. But
they're like cosmic beings that don't age, and they're just eternal, there to comment on whatever's happening. Their stories change every episode.
They're very much the Greek chorus of Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, they're the fates of that world. I love that they even got to have some plot importance in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
That was...
Before the coolest fight scene in this entire series. I love that fight on the Tokyo Tower, on the
it's
Mars
beautiful.
Tower.
So then they do the big chase scene, which don't have a lot of sounds from that, but it's set to Mushroom Hunting again, one of the best songs. Every song's the best song on this show, but I love Mushroom Hunting so much.
There's so much great action in terms of how characters get places, how they interact with each other. It's all done very well. Again, it's all visual, but you could tell like this was not a before this it was not a badly animated show, but they were really saving it for this scene, like saving all the animation for this scene.
Yeah, and this chase is amazing, and it's such a classic, like 3 different cars chasing at once, and then it's on a train. And right when Ed confronts the drug dealer, I just love the use of the stink guns.
Stinky gas.
Oh, well, landing here was a big mistake, but
Are you surprised?
Yeah. Who the hell are you?
What are you doing in here?
That's my line, kid. How'd you sneak into my ship anyway?
The door was open.
Huh?
All right, hit and run driver. This is a bust. Stinky gas.
And even in this silly episode, they don't skimp on the action at all. Like the big chase is big. And I also just love that Ed crams her way into a blaxploitation film. Like that this huge shootout is amazing. And then she just jumps in and 6 Ein on him. And then everybody else just falls off and nearly dies. But they both have to live because it would be too dark if they had died in those explosions.
Well, she's a Looney Tunes character interjecting herself into this film, almost parallel to it. And they barely even acknowledge her most of the time until she starts actively like fighting them. So it's kind of a funny, weird, absurdist moment.
Everyone has their own stories happening, and she's butting her way into them. But I must say, so long, Space Cowboy, to this episode because I must be leaving. It's highly unprofessional, but I will return to my own podcast on the next episode.
Okay, it's cool.
I'm very sorry, folks.
I just love the mean eye acting on her, just the like
little
the
hand gesture
of her
thing.
arms, like ooh,
trying to be intimidating.
Yeah, it's so cute. And just as a cow helpfully arrives.
I gotcha!
Hold on. These mushrooms are worth 100,000 each. Let me go, and they all yours.
I don't know.
Me or the shroom? What's worth more?
I don't know.
What? Are you a total ass? Take the mushroom.
All right.
That's Ein thanking the cow for helping.
With
all
little subtitles. It's so adorable.
It's so cute. Ein talking to a cow is just so goddamn adorable. This in general is such an adorable episode that I know if you're a bigger fan of like Spike doing Kung Fu, you're not getting that in this one.
I think if you really like this show, you have to embrace all the different sides of the show. And she's a big part of that. In fact, I've heard people describe her as the cat of the Bebop. They get Ein as like sort of like their as the family's dog, but then she kind of shows up and strolls in and out of their life like a stray cat and has the same kind of weird erratic behavior and odd mannerisms.
Well, they're all kind of strays except for Jet. Jet's the only one who's like, and Jet always is telling them, oh, fine, go off and do whatever you feel like. I don't care.
He's their mom folding their arms and being like, whatever, I raised you.
And also just Domino giving up the mushrooms and just Ed's like, I don't know. It's
right?
like, seriously?
You're trying to reason with a mad person.
It's like, but I think he realized if Domino realized, like, if he just is forceful enough. And when I know the ending of this episode, it makes more sense. At first, I thought it was that I remembered it as Domino tricking them by giving them the wrong mushrooms, but it really was he lost the other bag in the chaos, and he probably just forgot one was the bag full of bad ones that are not hallucinogenic, and the other is the good bag. But I also love him Ein grabbing the bag and tossing it right off of the thing too. It's so cute. But so Ed delivers the mushrooms. Everybody else gets over their trip, which it's so cool to see where they end up. It's another of those moments, like a little moment, but of the show trusting the audience to assume how they got to that point. You know, they don't just tell you how they got there. You're just like, well, you're gonna have to figure out for yourself how, say, Spike walked to the top of the Bebop.
Right.
Well,
it's kind of not important. The end of the journey is what matters. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's just so fucking funny. So Ed delivers the mushrooms.
Yeehaw! Dinner mushrooms!
100,000 each? No kidding.
Adds up to some pretty serious money.
Ed, are these real?
Excuse me.
Huh?
Police officer. Do you know a man named Domino? He deals in illegal mushrooms.
I'm afraid we wouldn't know anything about that, you know.
I'm sorry we can't be of any help, officer.
Ed knows about it.
Huh?
The kid's a little odd.
She's just playing.
She thinks it's a game.
I kind of wish there was a different episode where they end up selling drugs. They're just like, oh, well, let's just sell drugs. Oh, this is
like a
way
Breaking
easier.
Bad episode.
Then they realize that's so much easier than bounty hunting is just to sell these mushrooms to people.
Yeah.
But
I don't think Jet would be down for that since he's an ex-cop. I think he'd try to have a harder time justifying it.
well, that's why I love that the Jet is lying to that cop just to save himself from a situation he didn't create. Like he wouldn't have bought illegal mushrooms, but he's not going to go to jail for them either. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to lie to this cop.
They all adapt immediately to the situation to try to shut Ed up, who's just too honest.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of like it's a funny moment of like, no, Ed did good. None of you believed in them, but they did good.
They don't even know the insane adventure she had.
Right.
She just shows up with mushrooms. They're like, okay, mushrooms, huh? You're just lying to. Well, Ed tells a million crazy stories.
Right.
So yeah,
it's hard to know what's true because they're like a weird, aloof cartoon person.
And then I love that Spike, who is still kind of recovering, he just shows the mushrooms to the cop, and they're like, "Oh fuck!" Like they're about to go to jail for the rest of their lives at that point. And then the reveal, it's such a great like layered thing of the reveal that they are actually just plain old shiitake mushrooms, and then the cop like telling like, "Oh no, they're fine," and so they're both relieved that they're not going to jail, but also they got scammed and they again are left with nothing.
Right.
Nothing for all of their troubles. And that's when we end up with Jet making some dinner.
Dinner's ready.
What'd you make?
Shiitake stir fry, shiitake stew, shiitake salad, and shiitake on ice.
Again? How many days has it been now?
No more. I can't deal with it.
Quit complaining and be thankful there's something to eat.
Thankful.
The shiitake on ice is maybe my favorite of the recipe.
Yeah, I don't know if I could eat that even if I really, really had to. If I had no other option.
If it was your only food, I'd down it to just. Well, I'd probably tell them like, "Why'd you even give me shiitake on ice? I'll just eat these raw."
Yeah,
like,
you could literally do anything else with it that would make it more palatable.
But just all of them being sick of the mushrooms. But that's the only food they got. Like it reminds me of how they were just left with tons of eggs at another adventure as well.
It's like a regular thing of them being like, well, we don't have the money or resources. We get stuck with this like crappy set of options for food because of the misadventures that they were on.
Yeah, and especially that like Spike is always on a quest for meat. He never gets to eat meat with his food.
I feel like that's a very like it happens. That's a trait in a lot of protagonists in anime. They're like obsessed with meat, especially like Goku and Luffy from One Piece. And
that's true. Yeah. Well, it's fancier.
I guess it's a luxury, considered more of a luxury than here.
I mean, if you're used to like, well, anybody can afford rice, but can they afford beef? I don't know. Like, not for every meal. But Ed is satisfied by the ending. Well, meanwhile, I had completely forgot the last shot of it that like, oh wait, did Ein get dosed again? Or are some of these still magic mushrooms?
Yeah,
too?
I was wondering that too. Like, was the guy's reader just not reading properly? I don't know.
Well, if that was the bag of bad mushrooms, it could be that the guy just grabbed the wrong. He occasionally put a good mushroom accidentally in the bad mushroom bag. That's what I read it as. So they might still be getting dosed, which is a great little last gag there. I like that a lot.
Totally.
Oh God, this was such a fun episode that it shows you that even a slight episode like Cowboy Bebop could do so much.
Yeah.
There's
certainly like a certain tonal and thematic through line on like a good portion of episodes, but like I feel like episodes like this and Toys in the Attic and Pierre LaFaux were just like showed just how versatile these characters were. You could put them in any scenario, any setting, any kind of type of film, and they would work in that world.
It was flexible for anything, which is even something that like the Lupin show that it kind of is one of the biggest inspirations for Bebop. It had a certain fluidity too, but it was more like we have a different crime each week, and that would allow some different setups, but not the same expansiveness that Bebop kind of allows for by comparison. I would say. Yeah, and that and then I forgot too how great the end episode previews are too.
I wanted to comment on that, so yeah, I'm glad you're mentioning it. I actually wanted to read the transcript because I think it's so emblematic of the show. So the next episode is Speak Like a Child. It's a Faye-focused episode where you kind of find out a little bit more about her past through this like mysterious VHS tape that they receive. So Jet narrates it, and he goes, a videotape was delivered to the Bebop with no return address. We took a look at it, and things took a turn for the unexpected. Well, actually, the story doesn't go anywhere. At first glance, it's kind of pointless. The action is on a small scale, and the ending's sort of forced. But then again, what conclusions will you draw from it? Next episode, Speak Like a Child. At first glance, it's interesting. I love the kind of like self-awareness about the format of television and sort of what they're operating with, and how previews can kind of manipulate or misrepresent what you're expecting.
And that every preview is supposed to make you want to watch the next episode. And here's Jet, one of the leads of the show, going like, it's okay.
They do that a lot in these next episode previews. They're like, it's not really that big a deal. Or one where they're like being drowned out by the heavy metal and just can't actually tell anybody about it.
God, yeah. I think that also shows the confidence of the show too. They're like, look, you're going to cut. We hope we made something memorable or enticing enough that you're going to come and watch it.
Yeah.
So we don't care if like we have to explain everything to you. They can be very vague, and not even just vague, but goofy about it.
Yeah.
Just aloof, I'd say.
I loved the next episode previews of the show so much that I had, whenever I was at Telltale and they got the rights to Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, I was constantly being like pitching that as an idea of like each episode preview needs to be an unreliable narrator, their perspective on what's happening from each of the Guardians. And I think they were like into it, but then games happen. But it was such a like perfect, because it does. I love the idea of using next episode previews to reflect the character delivering it and saying something about them as people. And
that is a fair review of that episode. Like the action is slight in it, and it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Like it's weird in a different way from this one, because it's a weird fairy tale that also has major plot implications for the overarching narrative of Faye, but it doesn't feel like it at first. And then on top of that, they have a whole thing making fun of otakus, but just VHS otaku, which is beautiful.
It is funny that that's the only element of this show that hasn't aged quite as well, is the fact that they're kind of stuck in a time period, their version of the future based on the tech of the late 90s. But it is anachronistic and fun in that kind of way. I think it still works.
Yeah. One of the most anachronistic things about it is nobody has any kind of smart devices. They didn't think about who would have thought in 1999, like, no, the future is you're staring at a screen all the time.
I'm kind of about that life, though. I love the idea of a future without that as everybody plugged in that respect.
It lends itself more to neo-noir as well, like having to force people to call each other on the phone or not be in constant contact. That a world where it's like a sad tragedy of the show that humanity has built faster than light speed travel, but is still just shooting each other with guns. Like just all the like there's still constant crime. Like we can't get beyond that.
And even the people who built that system are corrupt and messed up and bad and won't take accountability for the disaster that happened. Like it's not an optimistic view of the future.
Yeah, but even the cops in the show, most of the cops or ex-cops are guys like Jen, are like it's all just a corrupt system. It's disgusting. I had to quit it.
It's a really interesting take on that kind of like sort of Blade Runner-y future. Totally.
Rewatching this, it made me think like I'm perfectly fine with all the Bebop we have, but I don't know. If Cartoon Network wanted to get them, pay for another 6 episodes or something, because everything from the 90s gets a new season now. Why not more Bebop?
I'd be curious to see if they could at least do like an OAV type of setup, but it would need to get the same writer, who worked on it, and the director, and I feel like the core people who are responsible for it would need to come back.
Yeah, no, Watanabe, Kawamoto, Nobumoto, Kano, Yamane, they all need to come back, I would think.
I bet they would. I'm just worried it would be like X-Files, where it's like a monkey's paw situation, where I'm like, you're repeating the hits too much. You're not doing new things with it. I'd be worried about that.
Yeah, well, the nice thing is that cartoons can't age. Like,
sure. Oh, yeah, you don't have that depressing thing where it's like, oh, David Duchovny, no, please, no.
Yeah.
But I mean more just like the writing, the stories they told in those new seasons were very reiterative to previous seasons.
Well, I do trust Watanabe has been trying so hard to not even repeat Cowboy Bebop, and be different with everything he makes, that I would hope that he is.
If he was going to return, it would be to do new things with those characters.
Yeah, because meanwhile, like with X-Files, Chris Carter, I don't think ever really got beyond X-Files.
He never moved on. He's still hung up on it.
It was his one hit. It's why it was like different with when Twin Peaks came back. It's because David Lynch wanted a new story to tell.
That's a good counterpoint to what I was saying. You're right, because that worked really well. He had new things he wanted to do with those characters in the world, and he went for it.
Yeah, so I would hope at the very least that Watanabe could get funding for more Cowboy Bebop if he wanted to. But as it is, these 26 episodes are great. If you've somehow not seen it, it's on Hulu dubbed, it's on Crunchyroll subbed, or you can find all the Blu-rays out there. There's tons of great Blu-ray sets.
They just did their big anniversary set you can pre-order that comes with a really awesome looking vinyl. If I hadn't already bought it, I would probably be tempted to get it.
I'm tempted by that vinyl. The $300 version comes with a really nice bookends too.
Oh,
but
nice.
I'm like, I'm not paying $300 for that.
lot.
I can't do it. But yeah, and it includes the movie too, which the previous Blu-ray sets didn't include the movie.
Right.
Though, I mean, I own the Blu-ray movie as well. But
you can get it for like $7.
Yeah,
it's not a big deal.
Sony made too many of them. But though that movie got back all the voice actors too, like some in the past, that was a real moment for anime as well, to let it that it made it. Like when they would do movies, they'd usually just recast everybody. Like, it doesn't matter who the voice is in this dub, we'll just recast people in this. Or like in End of Ava, it mattered.
That's a bummer, because Hyuga and a few other characters were just like, oh, you get totally different take on it. What were you thinking?
Yeah, they got everybody they could. I think they tried to a reasonable extent there, but
it's tough. I mean, especially because I know there's a lot of drama behind the scenes of that one.
Oh, yes. Yeah. But anyway, that's Cowboy Bebop, everybody. Thanks for listening to this What a Cartoon. Let me first throw the plugs over to you, our special guest, Nathan.
Sure. You can find out information on the game that I'm developing. It's called Slipstream Scalawags. It's a sort of throwback to LucasArts style point-and-click adventure games, but there's actually a lot of Bebop in there. It's one of my biggest influences from a sci-fi perspective, and also the fact that our game is sort of mashing up a lot of different aesthetics, similarly how Bebop kind of creates a genre unto itself. So it's a big influence on our game. It's sort of like what if Monkey Island had sort of dating sim character management stuff in there.
That's awesome.
And it's very like diverse and queer focused, where me and my creative partner are both really are passionate about sort of providing games for people who don't normally get games made for them.
Totally.
So yeah, you can check out information on our game at daxnd.com or slipstreamscalawags.com. DAXND is easier to find, so you can just look at that. And also find our social media channels at DAXND. I'm on Twitter at Kenji Salk. You can come bug me and talk about Bebop. I would love, anytime anyone wants to talk about Bebop, I'm like, I'm there, because I watch the show every year. It's one of my favorite. It's the thing that I measure every other TV show based on. Can it be as diverse and interesting and show you new things as regularly as Bebop does?
It's a hard standard to meet.
Totally.
For sure. Yeah. And I am HENEREYG on Twitter. You can follow me there for all news when these new episodes go live. And I do this with Bob, who had to run, but he's at Bob Servo on Twitter as well. He also works on the Retronauts podcast, where they go through they talk about a different old video game topic every episode of their podcast. And I'm on a few of those as well. And if you're not a listener to it yet, they just pick a topic and you can find a game you're probably interested that they have covered in the decade they have been doing Retronauts. But also this podcast, What a Cartoon, is supported on Patreon. Me and Bob get to do this full time thanks to the supported Patreon from folks who go and pledge at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. If you're a subscriber there, you not only get access to every episode of Talking Simpsons a week early and ad-free, but also to this podcast. If you want to hear next week's episode right now and you're listening to this on the free feed, give to the Patreon and you will get access to it, not just through the Patreon app, but I know maybe some people don't realize this. You get an RSS feed that you can plug into any podcast device, and our new podcast will show up every time they go live as well with your specific feed you get for signing up. And there's tons of other extras on there too, and we have some really cool things coming your way down the line. But most right now, I would definitely say for animation fans, you'll want to listen to our exclusive interview with David Silverman, the Simpsons legend and animation legend, talking a ton about the early years of The Simpsons. Or you'd want to hear Talking Futurama, our Patreon exclusive podcast, where we're going through the entire first season of Futurama, episode by episode, in the same style. And of course, if you haven't given this a review on iTunes yet and you would like to, 5 stars and some positive words are always helpful for letting the show be seen by some new folks. So please help us out if you can right there. All right, so that's it for this week's episode. Tune in next week for Space Ghost Coast to Coast, $20.01.
See you later, Space Cowboy.